Well, welcome to another edition of On Point Live, right here from the Manhattan Beach Studios. Hello, everybody. My name is Vince Ferragamo, former NFL Rams quarterback, and alongside me is my longtime friend, 20-year NFL legend and Hall of Famer Jackie Slater. Jackie, this last week in the NFL offseason, a lot of action-packed trades and movement by free agents. You know, they're signing, guys are going crazy, they're picking up teams, they're moving back and forth. You know, some of these trades are really impactful with the team that's receiving these guys. Any teams that stick out in your mind? Any players that come to mind when you think about who are the top free agents?
You know, Vince, when you say that there is a lot of excitement. Make no mistake about it, because the players in the NFL, they are aware of who are the best players. In fact, there was a list put together of the top-rated guys who were free agents this year. And when you see one of those guys added to your football team, it just energizes you toward the end, and that's winning the Super Bowl. To me, the top guy, the top-rated guy who played with the Philadelphia Eagles a year ago, Javon Hargrave, was special in every regard. And he was landed. He is going to the San Francisco 49ers.
Of all teams, right?
The San Francisco 49ers had the number one defense in all of pro football this past season. And they featured guys like Eric Armstead. They featured Nick Bosa. They featured Samson Ebukam and then Kinlaw. These guys can put heat on the quarterback. And the interesting thing about that, you look at John Lynch, the general manager, who was a safety in the National Football League as a player. What do secondary guys want? They want pass rush, Vince.
Yeah, they really they must have an admiration for defensive linemen, because that makes their job easier.
It does.
And so he knows through experience. That this is the way to go. This is the way, and they can eat up other teams in the NFC
Absolutely.
West if you have no offensive line.
Absolutely. And when you think about what you just said, Vince, if you look at the offensive lines in the NFC West, I mean, at this point in time, you'd have to say, okay, well, the Rams weren't very good last year in their offensive line. In order to beat Sean McVay and his talented, well-coached football team, we got to dominate up front. So that is another another step in dominating one of the top teams in the NFC West. Then you look at Arizona, you look at Seattle. None of these offensive lines in the NFC West are offensive lines that will make you just go, wow, these guys are special. They're all hard-working guys and everything, but they can be had by dominant, talented defensive linemen, and John Lynch went out and got the best one available. So I think that was a fantastic move, Vince. Another guy that moved was Orlando Brown. Remember, he came from the Ravens, and he was protecting Patrick Mahomes' blind side this past year. Well, you know who he's going to be protecting this year? Yeah. Joey Burrow. Joey Burrow at Cincinnati.
You know why, Jackie?
Why is that?
You know what? He was the only quarterback that has suffered so many sacks in his first 3 years. And look how good a quarterback this guy is. They got to get him some more protection on the front line.
Not to mention that in his second year, Vince, when he was really rolling, he got his knee blown out.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
bad knee injury. So you want to limit the great players at that position. You want to keep them on the field.
Well, what's Patrick Mahomes going to do now? He loses left tackle.
I don't know what Andy Reid's going to do about that. But, you know, you want to keep those guys standing upright, and the best way to do it is get the best available talent at that blindside left tackle position. Now, this guy was not officially a free agent, but his team stepped up and they made him the highest paid offensive lineman in pro football. And I'm talking about Larry Tunsil down there with Houston. This guy, he gave up hardly no sacks last year, no sacks the year before that. He has one of the top win rate percentages as a pass blocker, and he's on the blind side. So, you know, I'm happy to see offensive linemen peak. And this guy's making $25 million a year, Vince. And,
wow.
and he is really special and really worth it when you look at the way people are trying to score these days, which is throwing the football a whole lot. So those are my guys, and I think that they're going to really help their teams. And I'm looking forward to watching them play and dealing with the new competition in their divisions. What about you? Did you see anything that jumped out at you that made you say, wow?
You're an offensive lineman, obviously, Jackie, so you went with the offensive line and defensive line, obviously. But, you know, I'm a quarterback, so I have to go with the quarterback moves that they've been made. And all the talk this past season, of course, has been about Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
So he's on his way to the Jets. There just has to be compensation fulfilled before that free agent is picked up. But I think he adds the most to a team. I think he's impactful. He's experienced. He's an MVP candidate. he can really, and they're one guy away, one guy shy of maybe moving on in that AFC East. I think he's the top guy. I think another guy that actually put the handwriting on the wall real quick was Jimmy G. Jimmy Garoppolo, coming from San Francisco, signed with the Raiders. So now he's back reunited with the coach there, Chase McDaniels, Josh McDaniels. And so I see that team with Devontae Adams. I see that team really coming along, and I think they may go for a young quarterback out of the draft. So that whole thing will tie in good. But Jimmy's going to make a lot more money with the Raiders, and I think he'll add a lot to that team. And the other guy is maybe Marcus Mariota, who's coming from Atlanta, is moving on to Philadelphia. So he's going with a good team, with a good coach. And that's a similar system, Jack. So much of their system and their play designs around the quarterback. He's very similar to Jalen Hurts.
He can run the football. He can throw the football. And to have great systematic operational protocol given to him by an offensive coordinator is crucial. And I agree with you, Vince. I think it's going to be a unique situation to have him there as a backup. One of the things you did not mention relative to Aaron Rodgers, and I happen to think that perhaps it will work. One of the unique things that I noticed about Aaron Rodgers and his coming now to the Jets is that he had the opportunity to finger some guys from where he came to be added in this trade. And, you're looking at Mercedes Lewis, big pass blocking and pass receiving tight end, can run after the catch, big guy. And then they brought in Randall Cobb. They're talking about bringing in Randall Cobb. If they get Randall Cobb, this is just, in my opinion, this is made in heaven for Aaron Rodgers. And the other thing is, if you look at what Tom Brady was able to do when he went to Tampa, Tom Brady brought Gronkowski with him. The best tight end in the history of the game. A little bit long in the tooth at the time, but
he also brought in Leonard Fournette.
He brought in Leonard Fournette.
Yeah.
Leonard Fournette, you couldn't get a plug nickel for him, and then he never caught the ball out of the backfield. With Brady impressed upon him the importance of it, took him out after practice, and made him a critical part of their success in that Super Bowl drive. So because Aaron Rodgers has got the liberty to be able to finger a couple of key guys, it's just building the offense from his perspective. And I think that's really, really cool.
Well, I think, Jackie, to answer that, is that Aaron Rodgers, it's almost a familiarity with the quarterback. You really have to understand your offense. Nathaniel Hackett, who's now the offensive coordinator, he played under Nathaniel Hackett at Green Bay, had his best years in Green Bay. There's a familiarity with the offense there. Also, Lazard, who he threw to in Green Bay, is on the team. And they asked Aaron, obviously you're going to ask the quarterback, what do you think? And he's going to give his impressions of who he likes.
Right.
And, Randall Cobb, Mercedes Lewis. I mean, he even mentioned Odell Beckham.
Absolutely.
But I think Odell Beckham is headed somewhere else, and we may talk about that a little bit later. But I think he will flourish. With the Jets.
As opposed to fall. I'm make a note of that. Vince said he will flourish. Vince said he will flourish.
You know what? I mean, he's got Robert Saleh as a defensive-minded defensive coach.
He's got
they're just a quarterback away, Jackie. And this Zach Wilson can learn a lot from Aaron.
No doubt about it.
So,
and that offensive line of theirs isn't bad. I think of their left guard, Laken Tomlinson. He was at the 49ers. They gave him a lot of money to go to the Jets, and boy, has he not disappointed. He is a leader, man. He's a leader. He's a technical guy. He's physically dominant. It's going to be special watching them.
Right.
Now, Vince, the dust has kind of settled on this free agency thing, and as we go into these training camps, we know that they're going to have rookies. They're going to add impactful rookies. Some will be more impactful than others, but they're going to add those. But we pretty much know what the teams are going to look like, as they go into training camp. So when you factor in free agency, you factor in the draft and everything, at this point in time, have you been able to take a look at maybe your top 3 or 4 or 5 teams that you think have improved and that are going to be right in the thick of things at the end of the season?
Well, I'll tell you, Jackie, the number one team, how many this offseason, how many free agent wide receivers were calling Patrick Mahomes? Almost everybody. His phone was ringing off the hook.
DeAndre Hopkins over at the Cardinals.
Exactly. I'm glad you
Tweeting
mentioned
right
him.
after the Super Bowl.
Right. I mean, he's left to be signed. So I think he's headed his way to Kansas City.
Wow.
And that's what happens with free agency. Unlike when you and I played, we didn't have free agency.
Right.
Plan B free agency came in 10 years later after I retired. Boom, they hit free agency big. We left the game too soon.
We were born a little too early. That's what
But
the problem was.
they're it goes around and but free agency I think is healthy because a guy can excel, he can show what he's worth, and then in the open market obviously you can demand or at least try to get what you think your value is.
Absolutely.
On a different team. But I like Kansas City. I still like that team. They have a lot of draft picks in this draft coming up, so they're going to have to do a little bit of spend some time with the offensive line to help Patrick Mahomes. But they have pretty much everything in place. They're going to fill their roster, obviously. That's one thing.
It will be interesting to see how they function without Eric Bieniemy. I want to add that.
Well, yeah, he's on his way to Washington. But Jackie, the other two teams I would have to say, the Bills and the Jets are going to be right there. Jacksonville is the team in the South, and in Cincinnati, But in the NFC, I like the 49ers. I mean, I don't see anybody in the West challenging the 49ers. That defensive line, who's going to block them? Yeah. Nobody can block
Absolutely.
them. So, I mean,
and that's throughout the
Jackie, you might be able to play quarterback in San Francisco and win games over there, man, because I'm telling you, man.
Vince, when I take a look at the teams that I think did themselves good, the first off is San Francisco. And you mentioned it, Vince, when you just said what you said. If you look at the NFC West, the offensive lines, for the most part, have been dismal,
struggling
over the last couple of years. Now you add this young man, this talented young pass rusher to, Bosa and these guys. I mean, this is going to be impactful. And I think John Lynch recognized that when he added this guy and sold the people, all the top brass in San Francisco, how important it would be to add a piece like that.
Any other teams you like?
Yeah, I like the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay, so we're in agreement.
Even though they lost Orlando Brown, pretty much everything is intact. They still have the quarterback. And if they can get by with Andy playing at right tackle like he did this past season, get him motivated, that ball, they have ways of dealing with pass rush schematically that gets the ball out of Patrick Mahomes' hands. So I still like them. They're intact.
Did they sign Andrew Wiley?
I believe they did sign it.
Because you were talking about him, but hey, he did a good job.
He did a great job
in the Super Bowl game.
He did a fantastic job. I was proud of Andrew Wiley.
Yeah.
The other team that I like is Cincinnati, and them adding Orlando Brown, as we talked about earlier. Orlando Brown is a legitimate left tackle in this game. That's the only position he'll ever play if he plays another 20 years. This guy's a good left tackle, comes from great pedigree. His dad was a great left tackle in the National Football League. Mm-hmm. This guy is going to be special. And so those are my teams, Vince. And I happen to believe that I'm holding out hope against hope relative to Kansas City that DeAndre Hopkins. Now, can you think about it now? Their quarterback, Kyler Murray, is a little bit nicked up. Their whole progression offensively might change because of the lack of that quarterback. We don't know how he's going to come back from that injury, where he stands at this point in time. But if all of a sudden you got a $30 million wide receiver over there, and you're not going to consistently throw in the ball because you don't have the wherewithal to do it at the quarterback position, then now all of a sudden you can unload that $30 million on somebody who probably can use it.
It becomes expendable.
And as I said, he was tweeting He was tweeting about playing Patrick Mahomes after the Super Bowl. So those for me, Vince, are the ones. And then one last one, I got to say this, and I don't want anyone to overlook this. Von Miller tore his ACL a year ago. And when he tore that ACL, it really hampered the pass rush of the Buffalo Bills. This guy's a dynamic playmaker. We saw that when he was here with the Rams. We saw it for years when he was over there in Denver. And if he can come back and get to 100% of what he was before he tore that knee up, he is going to provide some special pass rush, game-changing player is what he is. And I think that really helped the Buffalo Bills. I think they've done themselves well a couple of years ago in free agency.